Hi guys, it's Beth. Welcome to my channel. Today I am doing my Bring Back the Basic Grey collaboration with Sarah from Crafting and Relaxing. We both realized that we have a decent sized stash of basic gray papers, and so I decided that we should get them out and play with them a little bit every month and enjoy them. We don't have to use it up. We just need to, pull it out and try to enjoy it a little bit. And so she agreed, and so every month on the 18th we are sharing some basic gray projects. So this month I decided to use a couple of my sheets of basic gray to make some bookmarks. I needed a couple different style bookmarks for some different things that I do, and so I wanted to make some corner bookmarks, and then when I cut down the paper, I usually have strips left over that I make like your regular long bookmarks with, and then I used the scraps on a card. And so I have showed you guys how I make my bookmarks before, but I thought I would kind of go through the process again. And one of the things I've always struggled with is what to do with the pieces that I cut off to make these bookmarks. So I'll kind of show you what those scraps end up looking like as I make my next round here, and then show you how I decided to use them this time. So these are the corner bookmarks that I've shown you before, and it's just basically paper cut down into a square and folded. And so out of a 12 by 12 I can get 4 of those. And then also when I cut mine down, I'm usually left with 2-inch strips, and so I can get some long skinny bookmarks as well. And I love like the double-sided patterns from Basic Grey. So these are fun to make. Like these I laminated, and just so you can enjoy both sides. And then with the scraps that I had left, I kind of pieced together this card. And again, I will show you how I did that as I cut down or work on my next sheet. So we have a 12 by 12, and I'm going to trim off the tear strip here at the bottom. And then this is double-sided. The back side is more of a solid, and then this is the pattern. So to start, I'm going to take my 12 by 12 piece, and I'm going to cut down a 10 by 10 square. So this is where my strip bookmarks are going to come from, because I have a 2 by 12 inch piece and a 2 by 10 inch piece. So basically what I do is I just take these two strips and cut them in half. So now I have two 2 by 6 and two 2 by 5. So at this point for these, I would normally laminate them, but just to kind of speed up the process for today, I don't want to have to turn on my laminator just to do this last round of 4. So another option, and maybe you don't have a laminator, another option is you can simply glue your pieces together. So I'm going to glue, if there was another cool pattern on the back side, I would probably maybe turn it so that you could see the two different patterns, but since it's a solid in this case, I am just going to glue the two solid sides together. So the reason I'm gluing them together is just to make the bookmarks a little more stable. Since I'm not laminating them, it just makes them a little stiffer, and I am going to have to trim it down a little bit. So I'm going to burnish it. So the only downside to gluing your two pieces together is that you're only going to end up with 2 bookmarks as opposed to 4. But, from a financial standpoint, a money standpoint, you're saving the cost of a laminate sheet. And then if you don't have a laminator, it's another way to make use of the paper. And you could use score tape here, wet glue, it doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that it's a nice strong glue. I wouldn't just use ATG. Okay, so I wanted to get these two glued together so that they could kind of dry for a bit, and then we'll come back to those. So now we have the 10 by 10 square, and I'm going to cut it into 4 5 by 5 inch squares. And these are what will make our bookmarks, or our corner bookmarks. So all you have to do on these, I'm going to do one with you, and then I'll do the rest off camera and then come back and finish things up. But basically you fold it in half one way, and then you come back and you fold it in half the other way. So you're basically making a square that has a grid. So you have your 4 grids, squares in there. So next step is we're going to trim out 1 whole square. And I always try and trim on the outer portion of the fold line, just because that will make it easier to fold up later. So now you just have like an L. And then we're going to go to the opposite corner and cut that square in half diagonally. So it looks like that. So then you have a square piece and a triangle piece left. So I usually kind of figure out which way it's going to fold in the best. And then add glue. And again, you can use ATG. If I'm using thinner paper, I mean not ATG, score tape. If I'm using thinner paper, I'll use score tape. But the basic gray is a good thickness, so I'll just use wet glue here, and then that's what it looks like. And that's how you get, by cutting this corner piece off, that's how you get the little pocket. And then I always have a little bit of overhang, so just trim that right up. And so now this one is done. And then, like I said, you're left with 2 different scraps here. So I'm going to finish the other 3 up, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I finished the other corner bookmarks, and since these are dry, I thought I would come back and finish these guys up real quick, and then we will work on using up our scrap pieces. So these are glued together, and I am going to take my corner chomper, my We Are Memory Keepers quarter chomper, and I am using the 1/4 inch round side just around the corners of the bookmark a little bit. And then I will use my We Are Memory Keepers hole punch, and just to punch my hole in the top. And then I already have my yarn pre-cut. It depends on the thickness of my yarn, as you know, as to how long I cut my strings. But what I will do is I will kind of fold it and kind of get a guess of the length that I want my tassel to be, and then, you know, cut that much. So I have 2 pieces already cut. And when I actually go to put the little tassel on, I do that same thing where I just keep folding in half until I get my thickness. So if you're working like with thicker yarn, you don't necessarily have to have as many folds. The white yarn I used was super thin. This actually isn't too bad. So now whenever you put your yarn through, you end up with two ends that are not looped over. So those are the two ends that I am going to use to tie my tassel. And I usually try and twist them around the little grouping here so that they hold everything together, obviously. And sometimes my pieces are longer. This time they're shorter. So my ends are hard to tie here. So basically, once you tie it off, like your tied ends kind of blend in, they'll blend in with the rest of your tassel piece. All right, so pull those up tight and then do my double knot. And then what I do is just come and open up the loops, and then I will trim it up. They don't all have to be even, but I'll trim it up just so that you don't have like some long straggler pieces. And then you have a bookmark. So I will go ahead and do this next one again off screen, and we'll come back and use up our scraps, because I think that's the part that most of you like to see, is how to use up some of the scrap pieces you have left. Okay, so now our bookmarks are done, and what we have left are scraps. So I know I kind of sped through the bookmark process, but I've shown that before, and I will find that other video and link it in the description box below, because it does kind of show you more or slow it down a little bit. But I really wanted to focus on this part without making the video too long. And the reason I thought this was important was in the past when I've made these and I've ended up with these square and triangle pieces, I've always wondered, like, what else can I do with them? Like, I normally end up punching shapes out of them, like circles, and then, or trimming the squares down and using them as squares. And so, I know, I just was trying to find something to use them for that was a little less work. So what I'm doing now is, because I hand cut this square out, I'm just trimming up those ends that I hand cut so that they're actually straight. And then that way when I go to use them, they're not wonky. So what I had actually, what I had planned to do with these pieces, I had seen a pin, I think it was a video, maybe it was just a video somewhere of somebody who made a card with triangles, and I thought, oh, that's a great idea. But then when I went back to do it, I couldn't find it again, and I couldn't remember how to do it. So when I was playing around, I came up with a different variation. So there's four triangles and 4 squares, and I actually want all triangles. Or I might leave 1 square, because I think I can use that for the final piece, but I want to cut all my other pieces into triangles. So you could do this by hand. I've done it by hand, but I just thought I would try to get a little bit straighter of a cut by throwing it on my trimmer. So I'm going to use 1 more here. Okay. I have a piece of cardstock, and it doesn't matter what color you use because you're not going to see it, but my cardstock is trimmed down to 5 inches by 3 3/4. And if you have bigger triangles, you could probably go a little bit larger, but this was a good size for me last time, so. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put 4 of our triangles around the outer corner of the outer corners of the cardstock. And you're going to overlap them. Ideally, what I was hoping for is that they would meet, both sides would meet here in the middle on the top and the bottom of the longer parts of the cardstock, but it didn't work out that way. So I found a way to cover that gap, but so it kind of reminds me of when you think of like a camera shutter, like the way, I don't know, I have a hard time describing, like I know exactly what I want to say in my head, but I can't figure out the words to describe it as to what it, a shutter, the way it kind of closes in, gosh, different angles. That's a horrible job. Anyway, so we're going to let that part go. And if I can come up with a way to describe what I was thinking of, a better way, I'll let you know. But at this point, I'm just rambling. So what we're going to do with our other triangles is we're going to turn them to the other side so that the green side is showing, and overlap the triangles again, this time working in the corners of the square that we just formed. And you could do the pattern side if you wanted. Like last time, both of my sides were patterned, but I went ahead and flipped it around so that the other pattern was showing, just because I wanted a little contrast on the card. And so I like this one, that the fact that it is a solid. So since I kind of have gaps here, if I were to try and line these 2 triangle pieces up, it wouldn't, there would be a gap. And so I just decided that I was going to place them over the edge a little bit. Just making sure that I'm lining up my edges here. So essentially, I'm piecing together a square with all of my triangles. So this last one, you want to make sure it lines up in both directions, on the right side and the left side. Or maybe iris fold, is that what I'm trying to think of? Is when you can like fold it and it kind of makes the opposite like diamond shapes. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Because I obviously don't today. My gosh, sorry. Okay, so essentially this is what I wanted to come up with. I wanted to use these triangles to create a square that's kind of going the opposite direction as my original rectangle that I created. And then with this last square piece here, I'm going to come inside the square we just made. So the square we just made kind of frames out this last rectangle. So when I made my original card, when I was playing around, I had already cut it down into triangles. So I just pieced the 2 triangles together, and I don't really think you can tell actually the way the patterns worked. They kind of lined up fairly well. But this time, since I knew I was going to put a square here, I just decided I would leave one of my squares. So I am going to burnish all that down really well. Okay, so this is our card panel. So then we would go ahead and apply it to our card. So on the orange paper, I used a white card base because even though there was a little bit of off-white, I just thought the white helped the colors pop. This time I'm going to use an off-white card base since, and I want that at the bottom, because the background of the paper is a little more off-white. And I turned that around because this point comes down further than this point, and I just thought I would make that longer point be at the bottom. Okay. So now I have a sentiment that's already pre-stamped, and I decided to go ahead and put it on some craft cardstock to help it stand out a little bit. Since it's off-white. And so I believe this is like a 1 3/4 inch circle, and then the craft circle is 2 inches. Okay, so there's our card front, and we have 2 triangles left. So what I did on my first card is just use them as like corner pieces. So I went to the very top part of the card and added one of the triangles. And then down here at the very bottom. And again, I'm just choosing to use the pattern side because I think it's a little more fun. And there we go. You still have plenty of room to write a message on the inside of the card, but now you have no scraps. So out of that one piece of 12 by 12, we have 6 bookmarks and a card and absolutely no scraps left. So again, another variation where you could increase the number of bookmarks you have if you laminated them. It's all just about whatever you want to end up with or accomplish, or what tools you have. And another thing you could do to eliminate even these, if you don't need the long skinny bookmarks, instead of cutting your pattern paper down into 5-inch squares, you could just do 6-inch squares, and you're going to end up with a bigger corner bookmark, but then you won't have the strips. So if you don't want to mess with these, then just use a 6 by 6, cut them down into 6 by 6. You could do this with a couple different 6 by 6 sheets of paper if you wanted to, just not trim them down at all, fold up your bookmark and use your scraps together on some cards. So I feel like this is fairly versatile in how you want to use it. And there is a lot of piecing together to get your card, but again, it uses those kind of funky scraps and it uses them all up. So I hope you guys enjoyed my Basic Grey projects today. And please be sure to check out Sarah's channel. Her channel will be linked below as well. And I know she has a bunch of 6 by 6 Basic Grey pads, so she has probably some other fun projects in store as well. So if you guys have any questions on my process, let me know. I will be happy to answer those. And again, I will link the video where I originally showed you my original bookmark process. I just didn't have what to do with scraps on that one. So anyway, I thank you guys so much for your time today and hope you're all having a very crafty day.